When it's too tough for them, it's just right for us.
Where would you rather be than right here, right now?
The Rockpile Report with Buffalo Bills season ticket holder Drew Gear.
The Bills make me wanna shout.
And goal from the 3.5. Once again, the rookie, Sonny Michel, to the goal line. Touchdown. He will give it to James White. White will get the first down and more. 15, 10, 5. Diving for the pylon. Touchdown.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Rockpile Report podcast. I am your host, Bills season ticket holder, Drew Gear. That's Chris Kruger, my producer, and that was Greg Gumbel of CBS Sports. Happy holidays, everybody. Hopefully you had a Merry Christmas. How did everybody else say? Did Santa leave you something nice out of the tree? Hopefully you all got what you were looking for this holiday season.
I always, because I see people that I don't see but once a year from my cousin's side of the family, the Scott side of the family. Like, I went to my uncle's last night for, like, dinner, and so, like, everybody was, like, leaving, and we're all saying bye to each other, and I can't not say something uncomfortable. So, I saw my cousin's cousin on the other side of the family, the Scott side, and I was like, yeah, it was good seeing you. I'll see you in 365 days, or unless someone dies. And then there was like, whoa, we don't want to think about it. I'm like, well, I don't know how to not be uncomfortable to others. Sorry, that's the truth. I will literally see you December 25th, 2019, or unless somebody dies.
Folks, and you wonder why he has to dress up and wear Chelsea boots and put sea salt.
I'm wearing Chelsea boots right now.
Put stupid sea salt spray in his hair. It's because he's literally unapproachable otherwise. He has the personality of a hornet. That's it. That's all he has. My Christmas was awesome, but it was kind of funny. I want to explain this to you guys. For those of you who have seen the movie Four Christmases, this might actually make some sense to you.
Wasn't the dude's name in the movie Dallas?
It was. Yes, it
That's
was.
your middle name.
So, my wife, I love my wife and I love my wife's family. And we spend every Christmas kind of dividing up, now that I'm married, you kind of have to find the division. You spend some of the holiday with your wife's family and some of the holiday with your own. I can say this. It's not that they make me uncomfortable, her family. It's that I don't know how to relate to them sometimes. Because they are genuinely nice to each other. You go there, they're the type of people who, they offer you a warm cup of cocoa. They ask if you need anything, and they're not being sarcastic about it. There's no punchline coming. And I don't know how to survive in an environment like that because I am a damaged human being. So I go to her house or her uncle's house for Christmas Eve, and we're there, and everyone's just in a good mood. They're talking to each other. They're making it. But I'm watching the way they're all interacting, and they're genuinely just friendly to one another. They're, perfect example. Her cousin, Mickey, gets asked by one of her other cousins. First and foremost, they're playing a game of Monopoly. The whole premise of Monopoly is to bankrupt your opponent. Just dance on their dreams. Crush them. Leave them penniless. That's the point of the game Monopoly. Her and her family are playing there, and her cousins are playing, and they're actively working together to try to problem solve and give each other loans and keep each other in the game so that they can keep enjoying each other's company for longer. What? I don't know what this is like, Chris. I'm watching this like I'm watching some kind of exhibit at the zoo.
This is exactly how Goldman Sachs got started.
And her cousin Mickey asks, he's going upstairs to get a drink. And one of her cousins who's playing the game says, hey, Mick, can you take my garbage for me and throw it away? And while you're up there, can you get me a glass of wine? And he did it. He complied to the T. He didn't throw it in his face. He didn't make some sarcastic comment and give him the finger. He didn't, take his plate and throw it in his face like one of my siblings might have. And because of how I'm raised, I have no idea how to interact with these people sometimes. I'm wholly uncomfortable just because they're so genuinely nice. I don't know I'm completely out of my element. Which, Chris, leads me to Christmas Eve at my parents' house, and the dynamic was drastically different.
We're going to press on, and we're going to have the happiest Christmas since Bing Crosby tap danced with Danny fucking Kaye. And when Santa squeezes his fat white ass down that chimney tonight, he's going to find the jolliest bunch of assholes this side of the nut house.
Folks, don't get me wrong. I love my family. My family's great. These are the people that raised me and made me who I am. At the same time, I don't get to see my brothers collectively very often. And our relationship is much more volatile. Like I said, the movie Four Christmases. Think back to it. I'm going to go to our Twitter account right now. There's a picture out there of what I like to refer to as the semi-annual Gear family brawl. Okay? That's where I fight for dominance of the Gear household. I have to flex a little bit of my brothers. This year they caught me trying to make a cocktail and literally 2-on-1 thought they could take me down and try to make me tap. Make me say uncle. And guess what? You can't hurt steel. Apparently neither one of them know what a fish hook or an arm bar is. And apparently that's their downfall. Chris, I'm happy to report I am still king of the mountain in the Gear household for another calendar year. My wife hears this from the other room. She's out there having a wonderful conversation with my mother and with my aunt, and all of a sudden there's all this commotion, and she comes in, and she has to see for the first time with her own two eyes, yes, we are having a knockdown, drag-out fight in the middle of my kitchen floor. Why? Because that's who I am. That's what I'm from. That's what I'm about. That's the dynamic that I share with my closest family members. And we love it. And we love each other. And that's what Christmas is all about, right, folks? Spending time doing the things you love with the people you love. Chris, I'd have to say Christmas was a rousing success. I am king of the household for another year. What could be better?
I have no idea.
Folks, with that, we are going to launch into this week's Bills News Update.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story. And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
The Bills are not going to the playoffs in 2018. I know, shocking.
That's all the news that there is. There's literally nothing else to talk about news related with the Bills. That's it.
I mean, there was rumblings of something about LaShawn McCoy having a personal issue with Sean McDermott, and that they had to have a closed-door meeting. I have a personal issue with LaShawn McCoy. I would love to speak to him about it. I would love to talk to him about all the money he's stealing from us on a weekly basis. I'd love to have that conversation. Is that newsworthy, though, Chris?
No.
No, it's not. Oh. So we might as well just jump right into our Week 16 recap. Open a fresh beer, folks, because you're going to need it. The Patriots 24, the Buffalo Bills 12. Let me run back the stats of the game for you. Quarterback Josh Allen, 20 of 41, 217 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, and a 52.6 rating. Quarterback Tom Brady, 13 of 24, 126 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, and a 48.3 rating. Tight end Charles Clay, inactive. Running back LaShawn McCoy, 9 touches, 19 total yards, $379,687.50 was his pay for that game. Wide receiver Isaiah McKenzie, 8 targets, 1 catch, 8 yards. Bills wide receivers as a whole, 6 drops and whiffs on catchable balls, 26 targets and just 11 catches, 107 total yards if you deduct Zay Jones's 31-yard garbage time touchdown. The Patriots rushing attack, 273 combined rushing yards, 6.06 yards per carry as a team, 2 touchdowns, 9 rushes of 12 yards or more, and a 13.2 yards per carry on by wide receivers on end arounds. Patriots left tackle Trent Brown, 5 quarterback pressures and 1 sack allowed. Tom Brady, passes of 10 or more air yards, 3 attempts, 0 completions. Chris, I want to start today's show off talking about this. Tom Brady. What the fuck happened to that guy?
I don't know. He's going to the playoffs, right? He's going to the playoffs.
Jesus. I mean, last week we had our Patriots correspondent Christian Simonelli on the show, and he talked to us at length about Tom Brady's sharp regression over the last month, ever since the Tennessee Titan game, where it's rumored that he took a shot to the previously injured knee, and that he's nursing some health issues that the team is doing everything it can to try to suppress by having him not miss practice time. Chris, I wanted to believe it, but at the same time, how many times have we heard that Tom Brady's injured, and then he comes out and throws for 350 yards on us?
That happens all the time, but you were also just, before we started recording, showing me all this is literally we've been doing this, we're ending our fourth year?
Yep.
Literally the first time you were like, hey, watch this, and look at this part about the all 22. Usually you have no patience with me. That's why I always go to Eric Turner for any questions about football. But you were like, hey, watch this. I'm like, oh, yeah, he is afraid that he's going to get hit by Kyle Williams. He is afraid he's going to take a shot, and he's shortchanging his throws.
Look at this, folks. I'm gaining patience for Chris. It truly is a Christmas miracle.
Miracle.
To run this back, you look at some of the numbers that stuck out most about Tom Brady's performance from Sunday that I was just dumbfounded by. He was 0 attempts, Chris, of 20 or more yards. None. He tried 3 passes, 10 or more yards, didn't complete a single one of them. Threw for less than 130 yards, and actually finished the game with a worse quarterback rating than Josh Allen did.
I couldn't hit sand if I fell off a camel.
I mean, that's incredible to me. How is it that you hold Tom Brady to a 48 point something quarterback rating, and yet you still lose the game? I mean, we're going to get to that in a second, but I mean, just to think about that, Chris, when's the last time that you saw Tom Brady look human?
Probably his rookie year.
And there was a couple plays in particular, folks, that stuck out to me. So as you're looking at the all-22 footage, like Chris was just talking about, how I kind of showed it to him and said, look, this is what I'm seeing. These were plays that stuck out when you're watching the game. First and foremost, second quarter, 3rd and 4. Cordero Patterson, wide receiver. It's a 7-yard out route. That's the pattern the wide receiver runs. Brady drops back. Inside defensive tackles run a stunt. Kyle Williams is bringing pressure, and it's developing right in Tom Brady's face. But Kyle Williams isn't even within arm's length of Tom Brady yet. He doesn't even set his feet. He just throws the ball at the receiver, not to him. And the ball falls 2.5 feet, maybe 3 feet out in front of the wide receiver and directly into the ground behind him. I mean, Chris, sloppy footwork from Tom Brady. When's the last time you saw that?
It's rookie year, once again.
Okay.
Rookie year, most likely.
Fast forward to the 4th quarter, where the game it's still early enough in the 4th quarter that the game is still a game. 3rd and 7, a 9-yard comeback route from Gronkowski. The Bills send a blitz, and there's a free rusher because the line of scrimmage and the running back don't pick up the right people. Brady has time to stand in the pocket, wait for the route to develop, and release the ball. But he throws the ball away while there's still a good 1.5 yards in between him and the blitzer, and before Gronk even has time to get his head turned around and find out where the ball is. The ball falls a full 2 yards short of where Gronk is trying to turn around in his route. Even his only touchdown pass of the day comes on a play where it's 4th and 4. They blitz. Edelman's open because our linebackers can't cover him. He catches the ball and somehow miraculously doesn't touch the ground and gets up off the tackle and runs away for a touchdown. If it wasn't for that, Chris, he would have finished the day with no touchdown passes. I mean, when you're watching each one of these plays, there's a consistent theme among them. He's terrified to hang in the pocket when pressure's developing in his face. He really, truly is trying to avoid the contact. I mean, it's crazy. That is not the Brady that I've watched destroy this team for the last decade. This might be the first time where I watched us get our ass handed to us by the Patriots, And I walked away from it, I don't know, just thinking that Tom Brady looks human. It wasn't, oh, Tom Brady got us again. It was, Jesus, how did they win that in spite of Tom Brady? Which is new territory for me as a Bills fan.
It doesn't help that we did nothing with that interception and we did nothing with that fumble from Burkhead.
No, but think about that. Multiple turnovers. Again, very un-Tom Brady-like. One of them, I mean, the interception to Lorenzo Alexander, I mean, that's an act of God. That thing just found his hands. But the other pick was a bad throw. And when you really start to look at this, the whole game was just Tom Brady out there trying not to get himself hurt, not really playing to win the game. The rest of the team had to pick up the slack for Tom Brady, which is the opposite story from what we're used to seeing from this team. And it really does make you wonder, what is their timeline to stay on top of this division? I mean, on one hand, you have their obviously, Bill Belichick is a wise coach, and he has that ability to drum up all kinds of stuff. He can win any game in different, varying fashions. He can win a game however he feels like he has to win a game. But with that said, part of that is the fear of Tom Brady. Chris, with a mediocre quarterback, do you think he's going to win the same number of games that he's won over the course of the last decade?
Oh, absolutely not.
No. Even with the best rushing attack in football, I just don't see that happening. I mean, this is crazy, folks. We're in uncharted territory watching this Patriots team.
Yeah, if he had Rohan Davey, he would have given up a long time ago.
Oh my God, well, you reached deep for that one, Rohan Davey.
Very deep. LSU.
My God. Oh, speaking about digging deep, Chris, you know who dug deep and yet came up empty on Sunday?
Our run defense dug a hole and buried themselves?
Our poor son of a bitch quarterback, Josh Allen.
Oh, yeah.
I started this season just despising this entire move, and then I warmed up to the idea, and now I've reached the point that I generally reach with most Bills quarterbacks, where you just feel bad for them. Sunday must have felt like deja vu for Josh Allen. Let me walk you through this. When he came out of college, the story on him was that in 2016 he had a really strong year, and that there was a lot of roster turnover heading into 2017 when he waited to declare until his senior year, and then that team just wasn't as good as the previous year's team. Chris, let me draw some parallels here for you between what happened at Wyoming in his last year there and what he dealt with on Sunday. In 2017, the Wyoming Cowboys started 0 starters from the previous season at wide receiver, tight end, or running back. 2 sophomore wide receivers, only 1 with playing experience, and the rest of the wide receiver core were freshmen. They started 1 running back who'd actually seen previous playing time, 1 that was hurt for the entire previous season before that, but between the 2 of them, they had 27 career collegiate carries. And they had a patchwork offensive line that they just kind of cobbled together in between seasons. So, Chris, with that in mind, is it a wonder that he regressed from one year to the next?
Yeah, he's not working. He never worked with a whole bunch at Wyoming to begin with.
So
none of those guys were going to be in the NFL anyway.
Okay, so fast forward to Sunday against the Patriots. 2 starters from previous seasons at wide receiver, tight end, or running back. 1 sophomore wide receiver, 1 journeyman wide receiver, and 3 undrafted free agent rookies playing wide receiver and running back. And tight end, if you want to get down to it, because Kroom missed his first season. This is his first actual season played. 1 running back playing the second game in his career, 1 running back nursing an obvious hamstring injury because he looks slow as hell, and they only ran the ball 13 times between the 2 of them. And, again, a patchwork offensive line full of talent that probably won't be here next year. I mean, no, Allen was not phenomenal on Sunday by any stretch. But everybody in my house watching that game with me on Sunday, everyone just agreed at the end of the game when it was all done, the clock read 0, and we all just kind of looked at each other. And we all just felt bad. We just felt bad for Josh Allen. I see this kid out here getting his ass kicked. He's getting hit. He's trying to make plays. He's dancing around in the pocket. He's trying to find somebody on this roster to help him do the heavy lifting on offense. And he's getting nothing from the people around him. Not the offensive coordinator, not the players on the field. I mean, Chris, the whole team just came unraveled. And like I said, he's got to be having Nom-style flashbacks to his last season at Wyoming. How do you not?
What's it on Sunday, watching the game? Everybody that was over at your place on Sunday, with the exception of you, we were all watching that game as a non-playoff team just playing a Week 16 game. You were watching that with the enthusiasm like they had a shot at the playoffs. We all knew their fate was not playoffs, and no one, I don't think anybody outside of you was emotionally invested in that game on Sunday.
But do you want to know why, Chris? And this is, I guess,
because you care way too much.
This is my biggest takeaway from all of this. When we came into this season, we all did so, I think. I think I speak for a lot of Bills fans when I say that we came into this season with a feeling that, okay, we've got a good coach. We don't have a whole lot of talent, but we've got a good coach. We've got some decent decision makers here. We're going to be okay. We just need to get a quarterback, and we just need to do this, and we just need to do that. And we all kind of made this laundry list of things that we need. Okay? Here's what I see, though, when I watch that game on Sunday. I walk away from that game with anger and with hostility towards his coaching staff because I'm realizing that we've answered some of the questions that we came into the season with in terms of, hey, do we have the right quarterback? Or do we at least have a quarterback prospect who we think we can groom into being a franchise quarterback? So far, Allen has done a lot well, and he's shown that he can grow from one week to the next over the course of an NFL season. But it's opened up new questions in my mind that I didn't think we'd have to answer. I figured by this point in the season, we would be seeing a team that's gelling, a team that's coming together, that's forming this cohesive picture of what we're going to eventually be or can be at some point in the future. And instead, here's what I come away with, Chris. First and foremost, I watched that game. There is no distinguishable game plan. Chris, first drive, we run twice behind the right guard, we pass it once, and then we punt the ball. Second drive, 3 short passing attempts, including one of the slowest developing screenplays I've ever watched in my entire life. In college, in pro, I've seen high school teams execute better screen passes than that. It was just a poorly designed play. And then we punt. McCoy carries for a loss on the third drive to start everything off. Foster misses a deep pass, and we panic, so we stop throwing the ball deep. Allen has to scramble, and we punt again. Come out for the fourth drive, Chris, and what do? We throw 4 consecutive short passes, 1 run by McCoy, and get our field goal attempt blocked. I mean...
Sounds like you're not happy that McDermott was not an equal to Belichick, who's probably one of the top 5 coaches ever.
I'm not talking about not being equal, Chris. I'm talking about you as a staff. Okay, so let's first on the offensive side of the ball. You came into it with a game plan that I can't recognize. I don't know what you were trying to emphasize because on one drive, you're trying to just do nothing but throw the ball. On the very first drive, you literally run behind the weakest part of your offensive line and then fail. Shocker. Look at my shocked face, Chris. Oh, good. You chose the weak link in your offensive line to try to run behind twice and then punted the ball away when the drive stalled. Then you came out and just started throwing the ball around on these little passes that weren't going anywhere. What was your game plan? What part of our offensive strength were you trying to emphasize? Because I didn't see it. I didn't see any consistency. There was no... I can tell, Chris, I can tell you this. The Patriots came out with a clear game plan. Let's limit the amount of times we expose Tom Brady. Let's run the football. Run it as often as possible. And guess what? You knew that was their game plan. You saw it. Play conservative offensively. Hope to hang on and get the win. They didn't just get the win. They blew us out. But the fact is you at least knew what they were coming to the table with. You saw what they were trying to do, and then it's on you as a defense to stop it. And that's where my second beef comes up with this. Failure to make in-game adjustments. Chris, you just heard me read off the yards per carry on wide receiver end-arounds. Cordero Patterson killed us on wide receiver end-arounds because
he had about 3 or 4 good ones.
Okay. A lot of that was because Lorenzo Alexander spent 97% of the game. 97% of defensive snaps. Lorenzo Alexander was on the field. And they know that he's too slow to wall off those long developing run plays. He can't get to the sideline. They abused that. They absolutely abused us with it. And yet, what did we do to fix it? The only time you saw them starting to put more safeties on the field who could stop the run quickly, it was when the game was already well out of hand. To me, that's inexcusable. They also gashed us in the run game by exposing the fact that we decided that instead of starting Julian Stanford at linebacker, bigger, established NFL player with experience.
Didn't he get carted off?
He did inevitably about halfway through the game. Instead of starting him in the first half, we started this Thompson guy, who I was really confused about last week seeing snaps. He's a smaller linebacker, and he got swallowed up in the run game. They targeted him time and time again, and Sony Michel running between the tackles ate him alive. It directly led to the first two scoring drives, was the fact that Thompson's a liability out there, and we didn't do anything to fix it.
That goes to show that at least for me, shows that maybe we don't have a whole bunch of depth behind Milano.
It's not even about depth to me at this point, Chris. It's about how do you address it as a coach. Think about this. You're watching the other team destroy you with a wide receiver on end arounds. Isaiah McKenzie's done a pretty good job these last few weeks running the football, right?
Oh, he's also done a good job of getting carted off the field.
He had 0 carries. 0! You didn't even try! You didn't even try to incorporate it into your offense, even though you saw the other team killing you with the same play. And at the same time, what you did, the handful of times you decided to run the football, you ran directly you went up the middle most of the time. I mean, Chris, out of our 18 rushing attempts, which by my count is far too little for a team built like ours, you only ran the ball 18 times, and 5 of them, only 5, did you try to actually get outside the tackles into open space. Instead, you kept trying to run behind center and guard. Again, the weakest part of our offensive line. Why? What kind of a game plan is that? I don't see anything here. I don't see anything mid-game when you realize something isn't working. What do, Chris? You can't just say, well, we rolled the dice before kickoff and came up with a plan and it didn't work, so we might as well just pack this one in.
Hey, that's what I'd like to see. We improved our draft position.
Who gives a shit? That's not NFL caliber coaching. It's not. Not from the offensive coordinator, not from the defensive coordinator, and certainly not from the head coach. And I guess that's the final thing that just really ground my gears about this whole loss. Because again, you're right. We're not a playoff team. We're not going anywhere. This win wasn't going to get us anything. But when I look at this, I see a lack of fire, a lack of execution, and it gives me a lack of faith going forward. And this whole Sean McDermott idea. Twitter ate me alive because I insinuated that going into next season, I think Sean McDermott deserves to be on something of a hot seat. Chris?
Oh, I would say that you were saying that he should be fired at the end of the year.
That was not what I'm saying, but that's because you're uneducated and don't listen. So this is what I'm saying. I watched this guy. I'm a fan of SEC football, folks. I have watched coaches, good coaches, come through the SEC for teams like Georgia, teams like Florida, teams like Alabama. And guess what? They run into the brick wall known as Nick Saban. Nick Saban and Bill Belichick are friends, and they treat their conferences and their divisions the exact same way. They chew up everybody you put in their path. And there's been a lot of good coaches who, maybe they're not terrible, but they're not good enough to get over the hump. So guess what? They lose their jobs. What I see, and I think is inexcusable, is when we play this team, Chris, this is a team when you take the job as the Buffalo Bills head coach, you know what you're getting into. You know you're signing up for a job that you're going to go head-to-head twice a year with arguably the best head coach of, maybe one of the best head coaches of all time to ever do the job. So I get it if you tell me, well, you can't out-coach him to get wins all the time. I'm not expecting wins, but I'm also not expecting this team to roll over and die every single time. We're like George Costanza screaming about shrinkage and about how I was in the pool. That might as well be Sean McDermott every single time we play New England. That's it. Chris, what? We fail to execute on offense regardless of who is under center. whether it's Tyrod, whether we have Eric Wood and Richie Incognito, or whether it's Josh Allen and a bunch of scrubs who won't be here. It doesn't matter who we field. This team is never prepared to play the Patriots. Not ever. You look at teams throughout our division, I'm supposed to have faith that this is the coach that's going to get us ready to go in the next year once he has better talent. Then why is it that the Jets have a similar record to us? The Dolphins have a similar record to us. Yet those teams at different points throughout the last 4 years, the same amount of time Sean McDermott has been here, have given the Patriots fits, and in some cases even beat them. And instead, we show up to every one of these meetings woefully unprepared and with no visible fire, no willingness to go out there and execute. I mean, the defense does what they can for as long as they possibly can, and it never matters. Why is that, Chris? Who do you blame for that?
I mean, for the defense, it's on McDermott and Frazier, but I've been telling you all year, we don't have any pieces offensively that Daboll can work with.
Okay, you keep saying that, but now I'm going to offer a counterpoint.
All right.
Who's to say that he's ever going to get it? And that's my point. Your point to me is, well, he made the playoffs last year, so you can't really put him on the hot seat. Can't I? Chris, teams that don't score 20 points a game on average don't win a lot of football games. I don't give a shit how good your defense. We talked about it earlier in the season. Teams that under are people who have it worse than us. And it was teams that thought that running the football and playing defense that it would pan out. We pointed to teams like the Vikings and the Ravens and the Jaguars who were fielding decent defenses, who were running the ball okay, and at the same time were nowhere in the standings. Okay? At this point in time, what faith am I supposed to have that McDermott understands enough about offense that he can cobble something together that works?
I don't think McDermott needs to have his hands all over the offense. I mean, he does have to have a little bit of that, but he's a defensive guy. Just let Daboll coach the offense. And I think when we get to this offseason, we're going to get pieces that Daboll can work with. Okay, and what happens if that doesn't work, Chris? Let's just put it out there. Then people get fired.
And so this is my point, though. How long does breaking the drought give Sean McDermott that much latitude that if next year after we do go out, because we're entering one of the most important Bills off seasons of the last decade, we have money to spend, we've got a young guy that we think could be a franchise quarterback if we give him the right tools, we're going to go out there and try to get those tools. And if we get them and we turn them over to this guy and the offense still continues to be what it's been under his watch, how much rope does he have? And that's what I'm trying to establish here, people. Trying to figure out how much latitude does McDermott really get? I'm not saying he's done a bad job. I like what he's done in terms of changing the culture around the team. I think he's done a good job of putting together a locker room of guys that do come out and fight for each other. But it's worth noting that he has 17 losses as a head coach. 12 of them have been by double digits. And at least 6 of them have been by more than that. Chris, it's incredible to me that this guy, who we all look at and we can all agree at face value when you see him, it seems like he's doing the right things. He says the right things. He acts the right way. He seems like the guy that you want as your head coach. He's the Rex Ryan antithesis. And at the same time, I'm watching him and I'm not seeing a very different result. I'm seeing a team that still plays mediocre offensive football. And I don't know that he has the wherewithal to fix that. And if that's the case, if this is what I'm going to see every single time we play Bill Belichick till he decides to fuck off, I can't abide by that. So how many more seasons do we give him, Chris? Or does he deserve, like I said on Sunday, to maybe go into next year on the hot seat? If you get handed all of these new materials to work with and the result is still the same, does he get another year? I'm not saying you need to answer that right now, but it's something that we need to start thinking about. Because like I said, I came into this season thinking we were fine on this front, that things would develop. And now as I'm watching this season go, I'm thinking back to all the seasons I've seen with similar things. This is Doug Marrone. This is Doug Marrone. This is Rex Ryan. This is all kinds of things that I hated about Bills coaches of the past. And I'm seeing it again.
We're having the year that we thought we were going to have last year. And the one thing, since we've been doing this show, whenever we bring up coaching, I've always banged the drum for consistency because we've never had a coach outside of Dick Duran who got a fourth year and was fired in that fourth year. Got to build a little bit of consistency here. I think McDermott should be here next year and probably the year after. I want consistency with my head coaches because we haven't had that before. That's it.
Yeah, and so far I haven't seen it. So you better find it because to me personally, I think it's costing us football games, Chris, and I can't abide by that. And that's why Sean McDermott is this week's Zero of the Week.
Hey, if you want me to take a dump in a box and mark it guaranteed, I will.
You didn't just take a dump in a box, Sean. You wrapped it, you put it under my tree, and put a bow on top of it. McDermott now has 4 games against the Patriots under his belt, and every year he's fielded a competent defense when we're heading into these contests. He's 0-4 in those, and the combined score is 109-37, Chris. 109-37. That's not just getting beat. That's getting out-coached, out-manned, we might as well... Chris, that's not even close. Not even close. And if that's the division that you took a job in, I expect you to do more. I expect more from you, even if you can't get the wins. I expect to see a more competitive unit out there on the field. Not you constantly being outcoached by this guy.
It'll be different when he gets his offensive pieces. Trust me. Trust me.
Seagram's bet. Next year, our offense doesn't finish higher than 20th in the NFL.
Say 28th?
20th.
And, just total offense?
Total offense.
All right. Somebody timestamp this. You got
it. There we go. And the hero of the game, I could literally only find one silver lining, and that's our safety tandem of Micah Hyde and Jordan Poole.
Here's the deal. I'm the best there is, plain and simple. I wake up in the morning, I piss excellence.
You look at, if I'm looking for anybody who did their job well, it's not the coaches. I can't even really give it to Josh Allen because, that one pick was just bad.
And that cost you Seagrams.
It was a bad interception. And really, our offensive line, our running backs, our defense tried, but our run defense was atrocious. But those two guys got together to combine for a sack, a fumble recovery, a quarterback hit, 15 tackles, and they each played 100% of the snaps. Nobody got behind them in the passing game. There was nothing, even when the Patriots designed plays to get downfield, there was nobody open. They took everything away. That in and of itself is worth gold. To me, at least, because I need something, Chris. I need some positive takeaway from this. And that's that we still have the best safeties in this division. And then the only people on the roster that at some point I didn't violently cuss out during the course of that game.
You were the only one swearing at your house about it.
How often does that happen, though? I'm the only one swearing.
Not often, but when the rest of the party understands we're out of the playoffs, it's just a football game that we're watching. That's it. At this point, I'm at your house to make some cocktails and watch you watch football.
I'm just glad it's over, folks. My blood pressure's starting to return to a normal level. I'm calm. I'm taking it all in stride. I'm trying to decompress. And one of the things that helps me with that is thinking about all of the people out there who have it worse than Buffalo Bills fans. So I bring to you that list for Week 16.
You are one pathetic loser.
First and foremost, former Redskins safety DJ Swearinger. You want to talk about guys getting the short end of the stick. Remember how much I bitched about just a few podcasts ago about the Redskins franchise and their petty shitbag of an owner, Dan Snyder.
That guy sucks.
Apparently their coaching staff is also a bunch of thin-skinned whiners. Safety DJ Swearinger, if you figure he was a pretty high draft pick when he came out of college. And he's had a great season for a guy who's spent a lot of his career as a journeyman. He's played for a couple different teams now. He posted 52 solo tackles, 4 picks, 2 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, and started 15 games. And for a guy who's had injury issues, that's pretty good, Chris. You'd call that a good season. You got named to the Pro Bowl. And we talked at length about how little the Pro Bowl means. but he's at least being recognized as being a pretty quality player. He's also he's not a guy who minces words. The Redskins on Saturday lost a heartbreaker to the Titans, and that eliminated them from playoff contention. And it's a game where they watched Marcus Mariota, starting quarterback for the Tennessee Titans, go down at near halftime, and Blaine Gabbert have to come into the game. Blaine Gabbert, Chris. Somehow that guy still has a friggin' job. Come out and win the game. So Swearinger criticized the lack of aggressive play calling as a part of the reason the team lost. He came out and publicly said it. He said, look, you're playing, he said the same thing, you're playing Blaine Gabbert. Why aren't we blitzing more? Why aren't we doing more to try to disrupt this guy who clearly sucks for the most part at starting at an NFL level? This is not just the second, but the third time he's criticized the coaching staff this season. Okay? I mean, he's previously bashed them for having mediocre game plans, for having mediocre preparation. He said they practice mediocre, and his quote to the radio was that, I like to practice like a winner. I don't like to practice mediocre because it means we're going to play mediocre. So, rather than take a look at himself, at the staff, or the people who have cobbled together this clusterfuck of a Redskins team, and maybe try to see where his Pro Bowl player is coming from. Instead, head coach Jay Gruden, the same guy who's gone 35-43 and has just one playoff appearance, Chris, decides to do what everybody else does in Washington when someone says something they don't like. They just fire the guy. Nah, Chris, that's like if you told me I had a poor attitude and I was like, fuck you, I'll find another producer.
Yeah, good luck with that.
That's it. Not maybe, hey, check your shitty attitude. No. Let's get somebody else to do that job. I mean, talk about shitty. This guy is going to go to the Pro Bowl because we talked about it. Nobody wants to go to the Pro Bowl. And if you're an alternate, it's almost a lock that you're going to get to go.
Can you go to the Pro Bowl as a free agent?
Well, this is the thing. He was just picked up by the Cardinals, but he's going to have to wear the helmet of a team he's never actually played for at the Pro Bowl. How pathetic is that? Another guy we should feel bad for because of the Pro Bowl, Broncos running back Phillip Lindsay. First undrafted free agent rookie in history to make the Pro Bowl. Gets injured in a meaningless Monday Night Football game on Christmas Eve. How shitty is that, Chris?
Thank God fantasy playoffs are already over with.
Of course that's what you're worried about. I mean, it sucks because the kid was so excited about the fact that not only did he set this record, not only is he a part of NFL history now, but he was really looking forward to the fact that I'm going to get to go to the Pro Bowl. And this is a guy who's only making $480,000 a year. Travel accommodations to this thing, Chris, are not cheap. I mean, remember when we talked about how more players would probably go if it was
isn't the Pro Bowl in Orlando?
It's in Orlando.
All right, well, he can get a timeshare.
He's one of the NFL's most underpaid players, and by NFL rule, because he's an injured player and won't be attending, even though he set a record, a brand new record that's never been broken before in the history of the league, if he wants to go to the Pro Bowl, show his face and be that, this is an NFL opportunity. It's an opportunity for the league to kind of put this guy on a pedestal and say, look, even those guys who don't get drafted, you still have a shot. There's some of you out there who can go out there and do something. And instead, the rules firmly state he'd have to pay his own way to go, Chris. He literally, a guy who doesn't make all that much, has to pay his own way to go because he got hurt in a meaningless football game. It's bullshit. It's stupid. Just another reason to boycott the Pro Bowl altogether. And what? It's in Orlando. Chris, you know who goes to Orlando? People with children.
Yep.
We're trying to visit some shitty theme park.
So that'll be you soon.
Absolutely not. There's no. That sounds like
you'll just let the wife take the whenever you have kids.
She can go wherever she wants. I'm not going anywhere near that place. They call it the happiest place on earth. It sounds like a fucking death trap to me. Oh my God. But no. So I feel bad for the guy. But you know who I don't feel bad for, Chris? Even though they have it worse than us. Everybody else in the division besides the Patriots. I mean, look, Jets and Dolphins fans are really getting the shaft here. But let's start with the Jets. top 5 for 2019 cap space. But they've got a GM who has no proven track record of drafting or signing free agents well. I mean, Chris, this GM put together a secondary. There's three of the most expensive players, Buster Skrine, Morris Claiborne, and Tremaine Johnson. All free agent pickups that their GM is spending a shitload of money on at the defensive back positions. Just allowed over 400 yards of passing this week to a Green Bay team that just had to fire its coach. Chris, and they all saw over 90% of the defensive snaps. You paid how much money for these players? And you're getting that kind of production? They've also got a lame duck as a head coach. And here's the crazy thing. Your GM spent all this money on all these players, and even though you're going to have all this extra cap room next year, you have a lot of holes to fill. Your new head coach might bring in a completely new scheme that just doesn't jive with the players you have on the roster. So now the holes that you thought you knew you had, you might be opening up new ones just because of a new scheme. And Chris, I think it's worth noting, for as bad as the Bills have been, they're going to finish 4th place in the AFC East for the 3rd straight year and the 4th time in the last 5. And then the Dolphins, those teal-wearing sons of bitches. First of all, Chris, they're adult men who have to wear the color teal. That's a punishment enough in itself. And so do their fans. Their fans, in trying to root for their team, have to actively dress up in teal. What are you on a spirit squad somewhere? Is that what you're doing now?
You could not pay me to wear teal.
Although, isn't that the same color as that sea salt hairspray you're using right now? Yeah, that's right. I see that in there in your bathroom counter,
Yeah, that's probably also blue.
Oh, you make me sick.
But it makes my hair look amazing.
All the hair products in the world won't fix the fact that you, sir, are a dead moth when it comes to talking to other human beings.
That is 100% true.
The Dolphins, 2nd straight season entering week 6 with a winning record, only to bottom out and miss the playoffs. The team hasn't improved noticeably in any facet of the game. Chris, they statistically as a team are in the middle or bottom of the league in scoring defense, passing offense, rushing offense. I mean, everything they do sucks. Everything that they attempt to accomplish on a week-to-week basis sucks. They have a head coach that probably should be fired and yet most likely won't be, but literally may have to depend on the outcome of a meaningless Week 17 game against the Buffalo Bills to save his job. What do you do with that? Your future depends on what you do in Orchard Park in the middle of December in a game where no one gives a shit. Chris, what do you even make of that?
Hey, I would much prefer to the Dolphins to be 0-16 every year. Like, if they're going to fire Gase, I would totally recommend them looking into Cam Cameron. I heard he's a really good coach.
I'll tell you this: if the rumors are true, and this game really does dictate his future with the team, I kind of almost hope that they win, just so that this division gets blessed with Gase's presence for another 2 to 3 years. And it's fitting we should end with the Miami Dolphins because that is where we go to close the show out this week with our Week 17 preview, the Buffalo Bills against the Miami Dolphins.
Travis Wingfield.
Soccer-style kicker, graduated from Collier High, June 1976. Stetson University honors graduate, class of 1980. Holds 2 NCAA Division I records, one for most points in a season, one for distance. Former nicknamed the Mule, the first and only pro athlete ever to come out of Collier County, and one hell of a model of merit.
Locked On Dolphins podcast.
But this is Miami, pal.
Mr. Wingfield, how are you doing this evening, sir?
What's happening, fellas? Merry Christmas. I'm doing very good.
Merry Christmas. Was Santa good to you this year?
You know, I kind of struck all these deals because I'm kind of a Grinch. I don't really buy people gifts as long as they don't buy me gifts back in return. So I didn't really get more than like 2 or 3 things.
Yeah, but that's not bad. It sounds like you got exactly what you wanted.
Exactly right.
Other than relevance for your football team.
Oh, shit.
Hey, listen.
It's funny.
Houses of glass, sir. Houses of glass. I shouldn't be throwing stones.
Yeah, very true. It's funny, man. I had this video on my Facebook the other day, like the 2-year, time hop thing, and it was me sweeping up logos of the Jets and Bills because the Dolphins had swept both of them for the first time in like 16 years, and it's like, damn, I was pumped over a playoff berth just to get to the playoffs, and now here we are 2 years later, and it's like, who gives a shit?
Exactly, right? It's like after last season, I'm kind of in that boat. I mean, I came into this year telling everyone, look, I'm not going to freak out. I was literally Jim Brewer from Half Baked. I'm not going to do what everyone thinks I'm going to do and freak out, man. And I still did because, unfortunately, that's just who I am. It's how I'm wired. But when I watch these two football teams, it's like once you get a taste of that and you break whatever size, whether it's been 2 years, 3 years, a decade and a half, when you break that drought and you get that taste of it, the next season you're like, okay, well, do I want to just make it again? Like, is that good enough for me to make it and get embarrassed? Because I don't feel like it is. So with that, I mean, I guess I got to ask the question. First and foremost, you recently took a trip down to Florida. Credentials, we talked about it on the professional media credentials. We talked about it in the last show. What was that experience like for you? Tell us a little bit about it.
Honestly, just from what I like to do, is this whole venture kind of started off as a hobby and something I love doing. It was like the time of my life. I couldn't think of a better way to take in a football game than through that lens, so to speak, and especially 2 victories. Actually, the first 2 Dolphins victories I've seen in person. I did not get a chance to see Jerry Hughes trying to tear a referee's head off. I was hoping I could have seen that to give you guys an update, but I wasn't around for that. I was still in the Dolphins locker room when that went down, I believe. So, I mean, just the entire experience was phenomenal. I got to see Bill Belichick like in a press room and just pissed off after that gut-wrenching loss they had. Seeing Adam Gase, asking him a question at the press conference, talking to Ryan Tannehill at the press conference. It was just something that any aspiring sports journalist it's an experience of a lifetime, man. It was amazing.
Speaking of experience of a lifetime, you were in Miami for the Miami Miracle. What was
well, Miracle. First of all, it's Miracle.
Oh, you mean the Miami Miracle?
Miracle.
Okay, I understand what you're saying now.
Miracle.
The Miracle.
Miracle.
So what I can't imagine what the atmosphere in the stadium was like. I mean, I've been a part of a couple wins, like these improbable wins against teams that you don't expect it. I mean, I can think back to the Buffalo Bills beating the Green Bay Packers to keep our slim playoff hopes alive here in Buffalo, and it ending on a strip sack fumble in the end zone by Mario Williams on Aaron Rodgers, and it happening right in front of us, and the whole place was just electric. I can't imagine what it was like down there in Miami. I mean, considering you guys only bring 20, 30,000 people in the stadium?
There were a lot of Bills fans. I was actually on Fort Lauderdale Beach on Friday night at a music festival that was phenomenal, and that's another story. But there was tons of Bills fans walking around down there, which I thought was interesting because you guys at the time were nowhere near playoff relevance, but they still traveled well. And just during the Miami Miracle, though, I was in the press box where you're not supposed to make a peep. It's like watching a game from church, they say. And I couldn't help contain myself as far as saying, when Kenyon Drake made that cut where he's like, oh shit, I'm gonna go for it. I kind of stood up and said, oh my God, he's gonna score. I said it pretty loudly, and you could kind of hear you can still hear the fans obviously outside the glass window, but you could kind of hear them start to recognize the same thing, and the volume rose. And then by the time he got that angle on Gronk, it was just madness in that place. And the Patriots, look on Patriots fans' faces, Dan Chauncey of the Boston Globe, Ben Reese, I think also of the Boston Globe, seeing them they were mad about it because Miami is a shit team to those guys, and we are. But I mean, just the entire experience of kind of ruining the Patriots' day and being there for it all, being in the locker room and seeing the guys excited about that, it was just unbelievable, man.
Well, I'll tell you what, anytime you can piss off Patriots fans, I mean, that's a victory in and of itself. So cheers to you on that. Now, to our own teams, I got to ask, what the hell happened to the 2018 Miami Dolphins? I mean, when we talked in the offseason, both of us were, we kind of, as Bills fans, knew we were entering this kind of limbo where they had torn the roster down. There was a lot of dead money. There was a lot of players who we didn't even realize it yet, but were going to be the equivalent of dead money, just they were going to show up. I mean, I refer to them as zombies because they should have been dead money. They're just not. They're still out here walking around. You guys had some stuff going on, some stuff that I highlighted about the last time we spoke. We talked about the defensive line and the front seven, how they're the most highly paid players on your team, and this year they really failed to produce anything, which I think in and of itself hamstrung your team. I mean, if you could just kind of summarize for us, what happened from these lofty expectations we came into the season with to where we sit now, where both of us are about to play in one of the most irrelevant football games of all time?
The ultimate toilet bowl game, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at the way the roster is constructed for 2019, and you guys had me on in the offseason. I was much more bullish on the Dolphins than most of the national media was, and I think that kind of came to fruition kind of to a point. I mean, 7-8 is not great, but it's a lot better than people thought they were going to be. And I think that some of that misplaced judgment what should have been put on the 2019 Dolphins, because even though Mike Tannenbaum gave out 3 of the worst contracts, in my opinion, in the entire league to Andre Branch, to TJ McDonald, and to Kiko Alonso back in 2017, he kept his job. And then 2018, you look at the way the roster is constructed and the guys they're losing this upcoming offseason, they actually did a pretty good job of plugging some holes and getting some veteran guys in spots to just make them a competitive team. And that's why I thought they were better than everyone had given them credit for. But a lot of those guys are coming off the books. Mike Tannenbaum now gets fired after doing better this year than the previous year. And yeah, it's just an absolute mess in the front office and the organizational structure. I think Stephen Ross just doesn't get it, which is crazy because the guy made $1 billion on this planet. He can't figure out how to run another business when it comes to football. But I just don't think they really have the guys to. I mean, they're going to take a whiff at or a swing at plugging those same holes that they're going to have when these guys come off the roster. But you just look at the young talent. There's some there, but as far as like gaping holes in the roster, they're everywhere. So we'll see what happens going forward.
So, head coach, your assessment now. I've been banging the drum for the better part of 2 years now that I don't think Adam Gase is as good as billed. I don't think he's this offensive genius. I don't think he's this quarterback whisperer that everyone keeps calling him to be. And I look at the quarterback position of the Miami Dolphins, and I say, you know what, the fact that you guys haven't addressed it thus far, you had a real opportunity to do so in this past draft, and you didn't. Now, I don't know if that's the GM's fault. I don't know if that's the head coach's fault. But now, especially with the news that Justin Herbert's going to go back to college, he's not even coming out in the draft. So the draft loses arguably its best prospect in terms of quarterback talent. And this is a team with a 31-year-old quarterback who, under Ryan Tannehill, hasn't found success. I mean, had a single playoff berth in the time that he's been down there, and they weren't competitive, and he wasn't even under center. So between the head coach and the quarterback, I mean, what do you see for the future of these two guys?
We'll go ahead and start with the head coach. It sounds like he's going to come back unless they somehow get throttled in Buffalo, which I hate saying this, but I almost am kind of pulling for that because I came on the podcast in the summer, like I mentioned, and I was pretty pro Gaze, and I said that he has all these concepts down in the red zone. He finds ways to get guys open in the offense, and he just, his record has been better than what the talent was on the roster. But that kind of flipped on its head this season because he used the same exact mistakes occurred, like across the board. The exact same things you complained about Adam Gase in 2016 and 2017 are still there in 2018, despite the fact that he finally got, quote unquote, his roster. So I just don't see him ever taking the step back and the introspective kind of look at himself and saying, this is what I have to do to get better. I need to adapt my scheme around my guys, when really the reality of it is if you don't do what I say I want you to do, or if you don't do these things a certain way, I'm not going to play you. In the same way that he didn't play Kenyon Drake as much as he should have, in the same way that he kept Jakeem Grant on the bench, in the same way that Albert Wilson got 10 fucking reps in a game this year when he was by far the most explosive player on the offense. So it's the same mistakes over and over again. Now, the other crutch that he has with him is that he really hitched his wagon to Ryan Tannehill and didn't make an aggressive move in the draft to go get maybe a Lamar Jackson. Josh Rosen was there, but I don't think he was ever a guy that the Dolphins were interested in. I know they loved Baker Mayfield, but that couldn't happen, obviously. And Josh Allen was the guy they wanted too, but you guys went up and got him, so that took that off the board. So as far as quarterback for 2019, Tannehill has way too much cash owed to him, in my opinion, to come back with all these injuries now that he's accumulated. 2 more this year to go with a knee from 2016, 2017. I think it's going to be Teddy Bridgewater going forward, and Adam Gase, I think, is on the bubble right now, which is so stupid because this game should not determine someone's future because, like you said, it's a shit game. So we'll see with Gase, and Tannehill's probably out.
Jesus. You paint a pretty bleak picture of your team here, sir. I can't wait when we do our kind of our season recap. When we start that AFC East season recap series, I can't wait. Once all of the games have been played, we've all had some time to calm down, where you land on some of this stuff. I look at the team that we're going up against and I don't see anything special. And when I look at our roster, I see a subpar roster that in some spots has just outperformed its lack of talent. Now, then again, I watch us go into the Patriots game and just get absolutely outcoached, throttled, just outperformed in almost every facet of the game. And to me, that's frustrating. I've got my own axes to grind with my coaching staff and with my players. At least we have that quarterback angle. There's some highlights here for us as Bills fans. I mean, when I look at this game, there's at least a few silver linings. First and foremost, again, it's the youth on this Bills roster that I'm going to be able to look at and say, you know, I'm going to watch Robert Foster. He had a rough game against the Patriots. I want to see if he can rebound from that. I want to see if Brian Daboll can rebound from what was essentially I don't know what the game plan was. When you can, as a fan, can look at a game and go, I don't know what they thought they were doing. I just genuinely don't know what their plan was. That's a problem. I want to see if Brian Daboll can rebound. I want to see if Josh Allen can shake off what might go down as one of his worst performances yet as a passer in the NFL. Because it was a bad day. I mean, it was just a bad day across the board for our whole offense, but they put it on. The Patriots made it his game to win, and obviously, you know how rookie quarterbacks do against Belichick.
Right.
So I want to see if he can shake this off, especially knowing how close we were to beating you guys the last time we played. I want to see if he can come back from an effort like that and put something solid together here to end the season. That gives us as Bills fans a whole lot of silver linings to look forward to. For the Dolphins, what do you guys have? What is it as a fan that's motivating you guys to watch this game?
Yeah, nothing. Literally nothing. I mean, like I mentioned, if they want to attach Adam Gaze's job security to this game, then we're already lost, because just having that decision in your back pocket saying, we're going to put a Week 17 game, an irrelevant game, as the decider whether or not this guy needs to come back and coach, when the previous week you had a chance to actually get into the playoffs still, and you laid a goose egg at home against Cody Kessler and Blake fucking Bortles, and you talk about what Josh Allen could do as far as giving you guys some excitement going into the offseason. He's going to do it. I guarantee it, because you go back to the game in Miami, he ran for $135, and last week against Jacksonville, Kessler was doing nothing offensively. They had nothing going on offense. They bring in Blake Bortles, and they just incorporate the simple zone read, the most basic running package in today's NFL. They go with the zone read, and it completely befuddles the Dolphins defense to the point where the Jaguars are now marching drive after drive. So, I mean, you throw the smallest wrinkle at this defense, and they can't handle it. The athletic, mobile quarterback, I think that Allen's going to just run all over the Dolphins' ass. As far as what to look forward to, I guess a drubbing and trying to run these guys out of the building so that they can do a clean sweep. The roster could be purged at like 50%, overturned this offseason. So we're back in the same saddle, baby, hoping for just completely overchange with the coaching staff and roster, and just fucking Groundhog's Day, man.
So you just said something interesting there that I guess this is what, at this point in the season, neither one of our teams are going to the playoffs. There has to be something worth getting people to turn the TV on for this thing for. One of the things that I'm going to be paying attention to really isn't anybody in a Bills uniform. Right now, the Bills have a lot of holes on offense. And I mean, they've got some room for improvement on defense. And like you said, there's a lot of players on your current roster that aren't going to be there. So with that said, do you foresee the coaching staff, kind of like how the Buffalo Bills have done? Last week, going into our matchup against New England, we benched former Miami Dolphin Charles Clay, tight end making $9 million. He's a healthy scratch, because the coach said, hey, I want to see what else we have at this position on the roster. I want to give other guys a chance at being the number one tight end and just see how it turns out. And we saw how it turned out. But with that, it shows that they understand that this is essentially just throw it away at this point. This is what we're trying to do. For you guys, is there any of that dynamic? Are there any younger players that you might see getting more time on the field that we should kind of know about? I mean, is there anybody interesting out there? And are there any veterans that you guys are losing who you think might be attractive free agent pickups once they hit free agency next year?
That's actually a really good topic to bring up, because the way you go into this game is you would think, you know, the forethought that Sean McDermott had to do that at tight end. I love that. I think that's great, like you mentioned. And last year in that Week 17 game against the Bills in Miami, the Dolphins actually took that approach with, I think, Zach Sterrett played left tackle and got beaten for like 3 or 4 sacks. I mean, it was just a nightmare for him. They put David Fales in after Jay Cutler's one series. So they kind of took that approach last year. And Adam Gase specifically said this year at his press availability this week that we're not going to go into this game just trying to get by. The famous quote, now infamous, I suppose, is that 8-8 sounds a lot better than 7-9. It's like, no, it fucking doesn't. It sounds the exact same to me. So, but that's what he says, and that's why I hate the idea of having a coach that has to win to keep his job when you're in the middle of what should be a rebuild. So that's neither here nor there. But as far as guys on the roster you could expect to maybe see a little bite out of, we have an undrafted rookie out of Utah State named Jalen Davis. He was a All-American back in college, and last week was his first NFL action. And he had a sack, a forced fumble, and he had a 3rd and goal pass breakup in the end zone. So hopefully he shows some bite. But other than that, man, I mean, not really. Kalen Ballage in the backfield could be a good guy to look at too for fantasy guys and just fans of football in general.
I mean, I look at your team right now and I see a couple guys that I'm interested in, that I'm going to be looking at because, again, based on the holes I see on this roster and knowing what their likely status is going to be heading into the offseason, especially if you guys are doing a complete teardown and rebuild. I'm looking at right tackle Juwan James. I'm looking at guys like Devontae Parker. I'm looking at guys like Jakeem Grant almost got cut. He almost got cut from your team after making it seem in the last 2 years like he was really starting to come on as kind of an undrafted guy and try to find his legs here in the NFL. These are some guys I'm going to have my eyes on. What are your takes on them? Just where you see them with their future with the Miami Dolphins. And what do you expect to see out of them on Sunday?
Yeah, I left that part of the question off. My bad. Jakeem Grant, well, he's out for the year, so he's not going to play. But so you mentioned he almost got cut. That was after his rookie year. He was terrible returning punts. He muffed everything, and now he's frankly the best return guy in the NFL. So I mean, I hope he gets a contract extension. He should be kind of cheap. I want to keep him around for as long as we can. Who else did you mention?
First of all, Juwan James.
Yeah, that's a good one. So I think they have to bring him back only because there's just such a scarcity on the offensive line in the NFL that if you have a guy that can compete at a high level, you have to get him back. And I think he's going to be expensive, but he'll be cheaper than anything they're going to find on the open market, and he's going to be a better player than what they would find on the open market unless you want to go for a rookie. That's basically your two options. So I would bring him back, even though he has some pretty bad games at times. He plays good most of the time. And then I think Robert Quinn is another one that could be interesting to some teams. He's, I think, 28, 29 years old, which is crazy. Seems like he's been in the league forever. But he's due $13 million next year, so I think he's probably cut as a cap casualty. But other than that, man, there's Devontae Parker could be an option. I think they're going to cut him here pretty much right after the season ends. So if you need a receiver, which the Bills might, that could be a guy you try to buy low and see if you can get something out of him.
I mean, I'm just taking a look over these numbers, man, for you guys for the last month, and it's bad. Your defense is giving up 155 yards per game on the ground, 27 points per game on average. You just mentioned, you got torched by Cody Kessler and Blake Bortles, who combined probably don't have the quarterback talent that Chris does here. Okay, so that's a stretch. But here's what I'll say. They aren't number one quarterback on probably the depth chart of 30 other NFL teams. Is that fair?
Probably all of them.
What did they do in that game last week? I mean, I kept seeing the score and I just couldn't believe it. I was too busy watching fantasy football, like the other games for my fantasy football scores. But I kept looking at the score and I'm saying, there's no way. There's no way this is actually happening. And then it was final. Jesus Christ, what happened?
I mean, they were largely stopping Cody Kessler, but once Blake Bortles came in, that zone read opened up the quarterback keep, which Charles Harris, my God, I put a GIF on Twitter of him chasing the front side of the play and letting the backside gate go out to Blake Bortles for like a 12-yard gain. And then from there, it was just Leonard Fournette and TJ Yeldon and all those backs they have down there. So they just started pounding the run against the Dolphins. But you talk about the defensive shortcomings, and yeah, they're terrible, don't get me wrong. But on offense, it's less than 200 yards in 4 of the last 5 games. 200 yards in today's NFL. Quarterbacks throw for that every single Sunday across the league. Like every Sunday, you have probably 25 guys that throw for 200 yards, right? Well, Ryan Tannehill never does, and the Dolphins' offense hasn't gained more than that as a whole, but like once out of the last 5 games. So it's anemic, man. To me, it's a sign that the coaching staff has lost these guys in terms of the motivation and getting the will to play because it's just getting worse and worse and worse.
I mean, I'm looking at the stats from last week. There isn't a single player on your team who had more than 45 yards receiving.
Yeah,
even Zay Jones managed to finish with 60 yards and a touch, even though half of that was in garbage time. I mean, I'm just looking at this and I'm just trying to think of what kind of just a shit show we're going to walk into on Sunday, because we're going to be there loud and proud, because that's what you got to do, right? I mean, you buy the season tickets. I'll be damned if I let somebody in teal sit in my seat. It'll be a cold day in hell, which hilariously for any of you might want to spread the word for any of your Dolphins friends who are coming. It's going to be about 28 degrees. It'll be 50 on Friday and then 28 on Sunday, because this is Buffalo. Of course it would be. So just take a look at this here. I mean, you look at the shortcomings of the offense, the defense. I mean, our team obviously has its warts. What do you expect your offense to bring to the table? I mean, are you guys really going to try this do you expect them to focus on the run because that's what the Patriots did? Are you expecting them to try to get by with the passing game? I mean, what do you foresee?
Yeah, they're going to run the hell out of the ball, just because if they get into third and long, they cannot pass protect right now at all. I mean, Tannehill took 9 sacks against the Vikings, which I think was a franchise record. And then last week against the Jaguars, it wasn't a whole lot better. Maybe 4 or 5, 6 sacks he took in that game. But they can't protect him right now. And he's kind of getting that, people talked in the beginning of his career, when is he going to become David Carr, not Derek Carr, but David Carr of the Houston Texans, where he gets hit so much that he has that psychological kind of, pause in terms of getting rid of the football. And I pointed out on Twitter today, there was a throwback in 2016 where he took a shot up the sideline and got blasted by Corey Liuget. And he knew it was coming. It was right in his face. And he drops a dime, gets a 15-yard roughing the passer penalty. And he stood in there and took that shot and threw that ball with confidence. And that's who he used to be. But now it's completely different. Like, he is shell-shocked. He's ducking into sacks. He's doing the old famous, what's the guy from the Jim Rome sketch where he says, I bet you won't call me Chris again. Jim Everett.
Oh, Jim Everett, yeah.
He's starting to look like that out there. And so you take that with the fact that he already didn't have great feel for rush and recognition of where the pressure comes from, with the fact that he's got a bum shoulder, a bum knee. He's just a shell of a quarterback right now. So he's holding things back. The offensive line's garbage. They're going to try to get themselves into 3rd and 5s and then convert from there. But they're the worst third down offense in the NFL. So I don't know, man. Just all shit.
I could have sworn you just described Trent Edwards. He made one play, and then he gets injured, and then now he's just scared. Sounds a lot like Trent Edwards.
I'll tell you, it sounds like what we're gearing up to see is 2 yards in a cloud of dust from both teams on most plays, which is going to make for great television, folks. Folks, do yourselves a favor. Hit up the store, whether it's the liquor store, the consumers, your local package store, depending on where you live in the country. You're going to need booze on hand for this one. I have a feeling about this, just a gut feeling.
Well, yeah, if you're going to watch it on TV, you're definitely going to need booze because, Travis, I don't know if you looked into it, but it's Beth Mowins and Steve Berline.
Oh, my God.
Making the call?
Yep.
Oh, my God. Thank God we're going to be at the stadium, Chris.
I know. Yeah, well, I'm glad I won't have to listen to Beth Mowins and Steve Berline.
You know what I'd rather listen to? I'd rather listen to Ace of Base on repeat for 3.5 hours while I shove a screwdriver through my other ear. Okay, that's it. That's nonsense. This crew is terrible, and this game seems like the perfect fit for them. Travis, before we let you go, there's no point in trying to make predictions on this shit show we're about to watch. It could be It could be the highest scoring game of the week because both of our defenses just shit the bed. It could be no points because both of our defenses show up and both of our offenses just become inept. Nobody knows what they're. I'm not even going to bother myself trying to make a prediction here. Under over, okay? I've got some under overs for you. First and foremost, it always tends to happen. You know that saying, you always want to be the hammer and not the nail? And it seems like injuries in the NFL happen when no one's really, like when you're not giving 100% effort. How many cart-related injuries? I have the under-over at 2.5. What do you got?
As long as I keep Xavier Howard out, so that cannot happen to him, I'm okay. But, yeah, 2.5. Shit, I'll go under. I'll take the under just because I don't want to see it happen.
Well, no, nobody wants to see it happen, but somehow the Bills' Isaiah McKenzie gets carted off at least once a game. I think it was,
and then comes back.
And then he comes back. And then he
the old
comes
Paul Pierce
in the same game. It is the Paul Pierce. The first time he did it, I thought it was funny. I'm like, oh, not funny, but I was like, oh man, look at this guy. He's a warrior. And then the second time it happened, it's like, okay, well that's strange. Why does he's holding his, it's like a soccer play. He's holding his leg. He's in pain. He's writhing around. They get the cart. They put him on it. And there it goes down the tunnel. And then 5 drives later and probably about half a dozen beers, I look at the TV and I'm like, I might be buzzed, but I know I'm not hammered. And that looks like Isaiah McKenzie out there catching that ball. Oh no, he's just out there running around again. It's like a soccer injury for him.
Yeah, when that happened with the Jets, he went down untouched, and I text Kyle, I was like, Achilles? And then a couple minutes later, he texts back, it was like, it was just cramps. And you had to get carted off for cramps? You LeBron James?
What? You LeBron James?
I don't know. It's crazy. Here's a good one. Total turnovers, 3.5.
I'll take the over all day.
Over.
It's probably going to be miserable and cold. Is there any precipitation in the forecast at all?
I hope
knows?
so.
Oh, who friggin' knows?
If there is, take the over and double it.
Take the over and double. And then fans remaining in the stadium by the fourth quarter.
What's the total?
Well, so here's what we're going to put the under-over on. I assume that there's probably only going to be about 50% attendance at this thing to begin with. I'm guessing that this place is going to be at maximum 3/4 full, which, Chris, if I'm right, what is it, about 70,000 people? 70?
Yeah, that's how much fits in the stadium.
Capacity.
Yeah.
So if you're talking 70,000, I'm going to say there's about 50 that actually show up. If the under-over is 25 by the fourth quarter, under or over?
I'll take the over just because you guys do such a good job of filling that stadium up when you aren't playing well anyway, so I imagine you'll do it again. But I did hear on the Move the Sticks podcast today that they're selling tickets for $17.
That's not the worst.
No, you can probably go to StubHub right now and find tickets for $8.
That happened,
Wow.
and that's not a joke. That happened to us. One of our fellow season ticket holders, Chris and I, in our section 200, row 7, we're sitting there. He gives his ticket away to his brother-in-law. And then after he gave it away and he's like, oh, I'm not coming, he texts back, well, wait a minute, I am coming because I found a seat on StubHub. Whatever I had to do got canceled, and there's a seat on StubHub for $8. And it's right behind where we're currently sitting. It's like, Jesus Christ, what are we doing here? Come on.
Secondhand sales, man. I bought tickets to the Seahawks and Dolphins opener at CenturyLink Field in 2016 for $500 a pop, man. So
Jesus,
I need those prices.
Yeah, no. Well, first of all, you're never going to find that at a Bills game in December. Yeah. But I think that's just commensurate with what we're looking forward to here. I mean, folks, for those of you listening at home, this is not going to be. If you're thinking that this is going to be some masterpiece, some work of art, you should probably go watch a different football game because you're not going to get that this Sunday. What you're going to get is it's either going to be one of two things, in my opinion. It's going to be one of the most miserable football games you've ever watched, or I see it just being the Bills just running Josh Allen down the Miami Dolphins' throat. Travis, thank you so much for joining us tonight and just helping us parse through this nonsense that's I mean, this is going to be an absolute disaster of a game, and I'm just glad that you and I both share kind of a sense of humor about it.
And where can we find you on Twitter, and what are you doing at Locked On Dolphins for this upcoming offseason?
Yeah, I just erased the entire whiteboard, which was prepped for the regular season, kind of gets my injury updates and just makes it easier to do the podcast next to me. So I just wiped that clean, kind of putting the contract situations together coming up for the offseason. So a off-season preview, both on the podcast and at LockedOnDolphins.com, and, of course, at Wingfield NFL on Twitter.
Travis Wingfield, one of our favorite guests, again, at Wingfield NFL. Always a pleasure to have him on the show and to hear about what happened to him in Miami while he was credentialed for that Miami Miracle. Did I say that right? Miracle.
God, I hate you.
God. There's not enough you could say about those North Collins school systems. It's a miracle.
Folks, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thanks for sticking this season out. It's been a rough one. I mean, just from a standpoint of downloads to my motivation to prep for these shows. I mean, today, I think it took me 35 minutes to throw together a show prep today. It's just been a weird season, and I very much appreciate all of you sticking it out with us. Those of you diehards who show up week in and week out, regardless of how ugly it might get or how many moose heads might go down on this end of things. Chris, it's been fun, but we got to get out of here. I'm Drew Gear. That's Chris Kruger. Thank you so much for showing up for this season of the Rockpile Report.